Hello, and welcome to September 5th, 2024. Hi, my name is Jenna Matlin, and welcome to my YouTube Live if you are watching live. If not, I will see you another time at your convenience. Today, I am going to talk about, um, for Grandparents' Day. Like, Grandparents' Day is coming up, and that is next weekend. And there is a lot of political conversations around women of a postmenopausal position and what that means to our society. And I wanted to kind of talk about the concepts of grandparents as well as the concept of just grandmother, grandfather as they have existed in and throughout tarot through the centuries. And I've done a lot of work and I'm really excited to share about this with you. But first, there's some things coming up that you might want to know. There is another YouTube Live on September 19th at 3 o'clock, and that is 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And that is for the autumnal equinox, which is about balance. This is going to be about justice and meeting the archetype of justice. So we will be doing a guided meditation and maybe some cards and talk about justice and also a lot of the other balance cards that are in tarot, of which there are many, and there's really good reason why. And also, I have my class. You can register for it. It is coming up. Hey, Patsy. It is coming up October 7th. It's called Speaker of the Deck. This is my seminal tarot course. That if you have my book and you liked it, you grokked with it, the course is going to be the live action version of that. So as soon as you register, you get all materials made available to you. So you can start working on it all now. And then we have 8 live workshops through October and November to just practice what you've learned or go through questions and give you a really safe place in order to do that. So that is October 7th. And then again, we have the justice meditation here, YouTube Live on September 19th, 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And so, yeah, that's all I have planned for the moment. But I'm super excited to get into today's talk because Grandparents' Day is coming up. And I have always felt that I always felt in some ways that the hermit card was often grandfather energy. But then I was like, I feel like what we seem to be missing in the deck is grandmother energy, wise woman energy, crone energy, and all of that. And I always felt like that it was a missing card. And so I did a huge historical deep dive to find the grandmother, and I have, and it's a really fascinating story. So if you like tarot history and you like peeling through the archetypes, then you will have found the right place. So let me pull up my slides here. That makes me, oh, I can't see it. How do I make this? Yeah, that's a little better. So let me go back to the slide one. So there is only 2 instances that I could find in tarot history where cards were literally called grandmother and grandfather. And that was during the French Revolution. There was a tarot, Marseille tarot pattern that was produced during the French Revolution, and the last thing they wanted to have on that in their deck it was the Emperor and Empress. So in this deck, it's grandmother and grandfather. In other decks, the Emperor and Empress designation it changes to Juno and Jupiter. But this is the only that literally says grandmother, grandfather to it. But for our purposes, that's the only time, and it tends to not be very representational of Emperor and Empress energy. So there's your grandfather energy, which is really the emperor. And there have been times where the Pope card and the High Priestess card have had different names, especially for societies that were non-Catholic in origin, as tarot moved up through this Alsace region in Germany and all of that good stuff. So But I want to talk about the hermit here. So, everyone, I think we would say we know that the hermit is about like wisdom and like scholastic things and kind of deepening your own self work with the universe or to learn something without distraction. But it's actually not the original meaning of the hermit card. The hermit card was called a variety of different names. One of them was Father Time. So you see, this is the so I should go back. This is the hermit card in the Rider Waite Smith deck. And then this we have, that is one of the Visconti Forza Tarot. I'm not sure I'm saying that. It's one of the first from the mid 1400s. It was commissioned and painted for very rich people. And so you see here that he has an hourglass because the hermit originally represented Father Time. And tarot decks do a funny thing. They have, there's never one straight lineage because there are all different kinds of tarot decks being produced throughout, you know, basically it was a wild wild west in most of the 1400s and 1600s until the Marseille tarot pattern kind of became the codified tarot pattern. So there were also the game of tarotki and different systems in play. So there were a lot of different influences popping into what we know and what we can find in the archaeological record, and also popping out of existence. So Father Time was one of the original designations. He was also called, there's another really great Visconti from the mid 1400s. I love this image actually. It's one of my favorite of the hermit. But you see, he's holding up an hourglass. So he wasn't the hermit. And there were lots of decks that called this card the old man or the hunchback. And so, what we believe happened was that over time, the hunchback portion of the old man became the cowl hood of the hermit. And some people believe, so here's another one. This is from a Minchiati deck, which is a tarot like game, but not tarot, but very, very close, a first cousin, shall we say. So here we see Father Time, right? He has the arrow through the hourglass there. He is on his crutches. So it could also mean like someone who's crippled and someone who's usually elderly. Is that the only ones I have with that? I guess so. So that's Father Time. And what they believe is that when tarot stopped being like these fancy, beautiful for the royalty and the court and the gentry, rich people game pieces, they started to be mass produced for the common man. So the art became much more simple because they were from woodcuts. And then the paper would be rolled over the woodcuts in order to create the stamp or the impression. So this is more of a common man's art. But what happened was, as these cards started to move from Italy to France to all the German to Belgium and all and most of Europe at the time, um, new artists would either misinterpret what they were seeing or want to put their little flair on it. So they believe that what happened was that some artist along the lineage mistook the hourglass for the lamp. And it stayed that way ever since. So the lamp, we can technically say, was a mistake. And, but I know some occultists are going to be like, no, no, it was secret. And that may be true. But we have a lot of examples of this happening in the record of just the artist not reading it correctly or not being as careful. And then that mistake gets codified as this is the canon option. And so when we think about tarot, we need to think about medieval thought and high medieval thinking at the time from which tarot arose. And that helps us understand what the heck is going on with the stories behind these archetypes. And so in medieval thought, you had a kind of conglomeration of Catholic doctrine as well as Greek thought, like the Stoics or Aristotle or Plato, and some Roman thought, and maybe some folk thought. So all of those kind of mashed together on the idea or understanding of the cosmos from a medieval person's perspective. So they also were really big into personification of things. So the tarot themselves, we believe, is based off of a set of either parade floats or plays where actors are playing the personified version of the concept. So this is the personification of time. And we see here in these slides, I'll make these a little bigger. Oh, I can't. Oh, I thought I could. These slides here, that these are two different art pieces where Father Time sometimes has wings, like we see in both of these images. Sometimes they'll have a scythe. And there's a lot of art with Father Time kind of like working hand in hand. He's not death, but he works with death. They work together. And so when we live the medieval times that the tarot was born out of was a very, very difficult time. It was a great famine and then the Black Plague. It was a double whammy. So a lot of the concepts in tarot really look to me like a population of people trying to heal the trauma of huge death, huge population losses. But Father Time is like, there is an order to the universe that you have a mortal life and it is finite and there is nothing you can do about it. So you can either enjoy it while you can, sing and be merry, but really think about the eternal life after this one, which is where your soul should go. And so that's a lot of the thinking that we see in all these personifications. You're Okay, so that's basically all I had to say about the grandfather energy because that was really easy to find. What was hard was the grandmother energy, and it's a very complicated story. So, when we go back to the personification of concepts, like I said, there are Greek concepts, Roman concepts, and Catholic Christian concepts. And there is something that can be a mashup of both. This image right here is not a tarot deck. But it is an image from a medieval manuscript. And this is where is it? This is Sapientia or Sophia or divine wisdom. And in Orthodox and Catholic thought, she is the divine feminine, or the feminine personification of divine wisdom. In more Orthodox lineages of Christianity, she's almost seen as like kind of like an almost goddess. She can be perceived as the Holy Ghost. She is the mother of let me make I get this right. The supernatural virtues of faith, hope, and charity. And so we see her sitting here, right? She's holding a book, but she is personified as this feminine aspect that is distinct from the Virgin Mary. It is its own kind of energy. In a way I don't quite get yet. I need to do more work on that. So when we think of the divine wisdom, Sophia, Sapientia comes from Greek thought. And that kind of metamorphosized into early Christian thinking. So this is where we see a lot of that synthesis happening. And there's a lot about Sapientia in some aspects of the Bible. Ooh, did I grab it? Did I grab it? Yeah, so there is something called the Deuterocanonical Book of Wisdom of Solomon. She, wisdom, teaches temperance, prudence, justice, and fortitude. Do you see where I'm going here, guys? Which are such things as man can have, nothing more profitable in life. This is a quote from the fourth book of the Maccabees. And so we see this kind of dovetailing of early Greek thought, Roman thought, and then early Christian thought kind of coming together. And so she is a very interesting character that has a lot of tendrils in a lot of different cultures. But I'm going to show you the next slide. So this is another image of Sapientia. So I want you guys to notice the symbols. So here she's holding a book. Here she's holding a book on her lap, and above her is a sparrow. And then in her hand is a hand mirror and snakes. Sapientia, this is, she's overcoming human bewilderment or even maybe like ignorance. And so we see here a very, a very like powerful figure. So let me show you one of the first high priestess cards that we have from the mid 1400s. That is also from the Visconti. And so she is holding the book. Doesn't she kind of look like that? Kind of similar, kind of a similar vibe. And so I believe that this may not be the Popess. I'm going to change what I originally thought of this card in the original meaning. I think those crowns are to signify that this is the female personification of divine wisdom. So there's grandmother energy. And so it gets a little more complicated as after that, because in medieval thought, we again, like their worldview was one based in order and balance and stability. Everything had to be balanced. You have the four directions, you have the cardinal this, the cardinal that. Oh, thank you. It was a lot of research. um, and so uh, so when we get to the virtues are really about how humanity shows up or how humans should live their lives. And so we have here another manuscript, we have the cardinal virtues. So in the lower left or lower right, excuse me, there is justice. And you see that she's holding, I wish I could make it bigger, but I can't seem to make it bigger. My apologies. Um, we have the sword upright and the scales, right? That's absolutely justice. Hey, Marion, it's good to see you. We see the cardinal virtue on the left. She is holding the emblem of a lion. And so there are some things that are pretty standard. So for force or strength, it is typically a lion, but it can also be a column. With justice, it is the scales and the sword upright. And then in the upper right, we have temperance because we have two cups. That may not be as clear, but that's temperance. And you can actually see it in the writing above. And then all the way over to the upper left, that's prudence. And again, she's opening a book and she is reading from the book for people that are studying. And so let me give you another really cool image. This is so most of what we know of the common man tarot playing cards through history are not from the cards themselves because the cards were played, they were lost, they decomposed. Where we know this is from what are called the print sheets. And these were print sheets that often had mistakes in them. And they had mistakes in them. So the printmakers couldn't cut it up and make it into a deck. It was a mistake. And what they would do is they would use that paper, though, to line other books. And so people will, over time, have been finding these very, very old print sheets lining other books that are the only knowledge we have of many of the common man's tarot decks, especially through the 1500s and 1600s. So this is a print sheet. It's called the carry sheet, is what they call it. And it's from 1500. I want you to look very careful. We don't have a full image of it, but you see right there, there's a woman. She's reading from a book on a pulpit, But look at, she has the acolytes that we normally see on the Pope. Isn't that cool? And so what I think was over time, the idea of seeing this card as divine, as the personification of divine wisdom, was somehow lost. And the idea of her just being the Popess remained. And then from there, of course, it turned into the high priestess. So I'm going to go back to show you. We can see her in the upper hand, right? She's got her book. She's teaching people. People are listening. She's here. She's obviously looks like she's talking to somebody, right? Like she is in teacher mode. And here, I think they would have understood that crown as divine wisdom. I have an earlier YouTuber. I was like, I think this is Pope Joan. I take that back. I think I was wrong. I think it's this. And then look at that one. It's pretty cool, right? Are you guys as excited as I am to look at this is so exciting for me. So how can that not be divine wisdom? She's definitely not a pope pretending she's a male pope, right? She's obviously a very feminine face. She is sitting like in the doorway of some place. She has obviously a tonsured monk, like literally listening and looking up to her. This is Sophia. This is Sapientia. This is divine wisdom. And also this is prudence. So over time, like again, we want to look at what are the symbols within these images, because we also need to remember that the people, the common man that were using these playing cards, many of them, if not most of them, were illiterate. There was no little white book for them. So emblems were very, very important to medieval people because the symbols within the emblems told the people who these people were and what their stories were because they couldn't read. So during this time before you had a lot of literacy, these symbolic like seals, like, you know, like you may have a family seal, or you may have a seal of your country or your state that comes from like being able to denote something that would be clear to people that are illiterate. And so we also see it here. So this is also Prudence. This is also from a manuscript. And you can see the writing is Prudence right above her. And it looks like she has maybe, I don't know if it's like, it's probably not nun gear. I don't know. It could just be regular women gear for the 1400s. And this is from the 1400s as well. But you see in her hand, she's holding a hand mirror. And it looks like behind her, she has like a clock. And then below that thing in red is a dragon. Now, remember what I said earlier, that prudence often shows up with a mirror, a book, or a snake. Sometimes that snake became a dragon. They didn't really make much of a difference. It was just like reptile. So you see over, you know, they weren't as like scientifically like exacting as we are, right? It was a different way of thinking about the world. But there's prudence. So you see that it will start to shift. This is an emblem of prudence by a book of emblems that was done around in the early 1500s or around 1500. And so you see that there's a collection of items that you see and you know, and there's some new ones, and they're really important because if you look at all these emblems, it will allow you to ascertain where prudence is in your deck. And I've heard a lot of histories, a lot of, you know, someone said, oh, I think the prudence is hiding in the hermit. And I was like, okay, thank you, Marion. Um, and I was like, nope, prudence isn't hiding. Prudence was either like forgotten or recombined or like re-added, and I'm going to show you that. But here's the emblem from Prudence that anyone would have understood. So she has, I can't zoom in, but just to direct you, so she has the hand mirror. She has the snake. She has the stag next to her. And what you also can't see very clearly in this image is that she's two-faced. So she has the face of a maiden and the face of an old man facing the other way. And there are a lot of images that would be of a young woman, a middle-aged woman, and an old woman, all on the face of Prudence. So that's where you also see that grandmother energy. And sometimes grandfather, I would say, but the idea of Prudence, and I want to clear up the idea of Prudence because I think how most of us see Prudence is not like Prudence to the English speaker today would be like, oh, you're being cautious, you're being a prude, you're being like whatever. That's not the original meaning of Prudence. Prudence was the personification of that divine wisdom, which is I am using my logic, I am using my intellect, I am using my intuition, I'm using my psychic ability, and I am just using my wisdom and my cleverness in order to be able to make the best possible choices in life. And we see this in this image because the old man and the young woman represent someone so wise that they can make decisions that will benefit them many decades ahead, or even the foresight, being able to see. The snake and the armored helmet um, often come from Athena. So there was a little bit of like symbol drift happening. But I don't think she would have been seen as Athena traditionally. Like, and the thing is when we look in history, we're like, why did they forget that? Why did they forget this? We have to remember this is over hundreds and hundreds of years where there's no internet and books are rare. And you can't just go to the library and look up something in a card catalog. And so it was easy for things to kind of fall away and then be found again in a way that often doesn't make sense to us today. And so yeah, that's all of this. And then for Prudence, she's always looking in the hand mirror. And what that represents is clarity of knowing of self. I'm not deluding myself. I'm not deceiving myself. I don't have, like, I see myself clearly. I see through my own BS. I see how I see myself. And that self reflective regard of the clarity of truth is what gives her a huge power to her divine wisdom. And the way they looked at the cardinal virtues, prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude, was that prudence was a little above the other three because prudence was what enabled the other three. It kind of ruled the other three. That prudence kept fortitude from, leaning into fury, and also like showed up so that there was no cowardice. Temperance, so that we have just enough but not too much. Justice, so that we're doing things right and everyone has their share. So prudence was really kind of the top dog of the four. But prudence and justice in many of the stories of the time worked together. They were often like a team in the allegorical stories of Jesus in medieval thought. So, so I show you this because this is from, it's called Animal Tarot. So there's this whole other really cool, and these were never used for divination. They were used for playing cards. But there's this whole cool Germanic and Alsatian, like family of tarot cards that just had mostly animals in it, but they were in a tarot pattern. So we can see here we have number 2, right? That's the high priestess. This is the second trump. And look, it's the stag. There's the stag. There's the stag. Anyone playing with this deck would know that this represents Sophia or Prudence. And I know that I didn't add the other card, but the card in the 11th traditional position is strength. Guess what? That card is of a lion. They knew what they were doing. And that's how we know that this is what this was. Isn't that neat, guys? Yes, secular women did wear wimples. I think it's a cool look. I'd like to do that. And then I wouldn't have to do my hair. I'd have like these like horns like sticking up. I'm here for it. So between like, through antiquity until about probably the end of the 1700s, early 1800s, we see a lot of that personification. So here's another personification of Prudence. So she still has the snake. but she doesn't have a mirror, and she has doves. Sometimes doves are also a symbol as well as sparrow. So as you see throughout the hundreds of years, like image some of those symbols are consistent, some of them fall away, but that's what we're looking for. This is a card from a deck called the Monkeyati. The Monkeyati is like a 97 card deck. It is considered a cousin, like a first cousin to tarot. And in that deck, you have all of the cardinal virtues. You also have the supernatural or theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity. And by the way, those earliest tarot decks also had the theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity, and they were not kept in the deck because tarot for many years was not numbered. There were no numbers on them. And often they didn't even have names, the very, very old ones. But there was an assumption that if you were playing this game, you knew what number it was. You knew how many points that card was worth. We didn't have to write it down. And it was only later when they put numbering on it and titled it, did kind of this, what is this going to be, started to kind of solidify into the system we know today. But it wasn't always like that. So you could argue and say, well, there was faith, hope, and charity in the OG tarot decks. Why don't we still have them? And that's just, it is the drift of symbology and also cards becoming famous and then not being popular and then becoming popular again. And then you have the artists always wanting to put their kind of spin on it. But yeah, there she is. And we know it's her. She's got a snake. She's got a mirror. This is an actual tarot deck. This is the tarot of the Mantegna. Oh, I apologize on my Italian pronunciation. I have no idea, but this is from 1465. So this is an actual tarot deck, and we have Prudence. So we have her looking in the mirror, but it says 35. I don't know what that numbering is. So this is before it was actually codified. And we have the dragon at her feet, which is also the snake. And we have the two faces, the woman and the old man. And sometimes it's the old woman. And then here is another tarot deck of the time. This is a Series S tarot from 1465. Very similar. There's a dragon. It looks like a very Asian dragon, doesn't it? Which makes a lot of sense. There was a lot of stuff coming through from the Silk Road at the time, and a lot of art at that time started to take on the influence of Asian art. Oh, Michelle, yeah, let me know what deck that is. I would really like to see it. And so see here, again, she's looking at an image of herself, and there's the double faces. She also has in her hand the, what is it called? They use it for building stuff, engineering stuff. I forgot what that's called. I don't do any of that. And sometimes I would see that as well. So this idea, if we think about the high priestess, if a high priestess is truly Sophia, truly Prudence, then the idea of the high priestess as kind of more or less codified by the Rider-Waite-Smith is an incomplete image of grandmother energy, because we often see the high priestess as only she's the intuitive, the lunar, she's like taking it in, she's vibing with it, right? Like the mystery, like the high priestess of the Delphi, right? And I think that's one aspect of her. But she's also smart as hell, logical and scientific. She has all of the tools in her toolbox in order to be able to um, be the Holy Ghost of enabling that quality to others. And that's pretty grandmother energy to me, if I'm honest with you. And this is distinct from what we understand of the Hierophant, which is that more traditional meaning. So this is why I'm always interested in looking at the feminine aspects of the cards, because they're the ones that have shifted so much through time, from men, white privileged men who knew how to write and could write books. And often they get lost. And so, especially when it comes to the women in the tarot deck, we have an incomplete history. Oh, that's cool that Liz Dean did that. Okay, this is actually really cool. So, this is a tarot deck from the Tarot of Paris. It came out in the early 1600s. And I think what happened is that some artists felt, oh no, like prudence should be in here if we've got the other three. And remember what I said, that justice and prudence often worked together. We see it here. So we obviously see the sword, we see the scales, but we also see the two heads. So I feel like this was somebody with some artistic license going, at this time, we've kind of codified we that this game of Taroki can only be like 21 triumphs, trump cards, and they have the same system of pattern over and over and over again. But I feel like it's missing the prudence. So I'm just going to kind of put it in here. This is an older, this is the Besançon Tarot. And here's justice again. So we have the sword and the scales, and we also have the book and the snake and the mirror. So divine wisdom was, in my opinion, as of right now, was kind of removed over the years from the high priestess. And for those who, and then prudence itself was removed from other decks. And then in later decks, some people saying, hey, wait a minute, we're kind of missing something, would often add prudence to justice because they often worked together. But even over time, um, this one actually came out in 1865. So this is a more of a playing card deck, but the lineage of the Marseille pattern um, was a slightly different lineage. So we saw prudence removed earlier from the deck. And then once it became codified, that was it. And that's it. That is my talk of the highest of grandmother energy. It's a long, and this took me so much work, guys, to like really start to pull apart what happened. We don't have every card of every deck, but there was a point that what tarot would become were different types of tarot games with different numbers of trumps and different types of trumps. And then over time, it kind of became more like maybe the most popular one that people like to play the most. That really became the one. And so once we had that, what was lost before that was never re-added because the game requires a certain number of trumps. And each one of those trumps has a determined number of points. So, for example, the magician and the fool are the two lowest. So let's just say the magician is 1 point. Well, then you can't remove the magician because then how would people play that game? And so that's kind of what happened. And it was Sophia that took the hit. And so that grandma energy, that huge grandma energy was in tarot. So if you were like me going, it feels like it's missing grandma, you're right. It is. And I believe these are the complicated and many layered reasons why. So go to your grandmother, go to your grandfather, if they're here or on the other realms, and give them some love. But the more I do this, thank you. Yeah, it's really interesting. And then in 2 weeks, I'll be doing justice and meeting justice. And that's more about a guided meditation rather than the history. But um, the the four virtues were really seen as how to live as a good person. And the hope, faith, and charity were considered um, like impossible for you as a human to even do, that it requires divine intervention in order to be manifested within the human. And so when we look at medieval thought, there's like four corners and like these five things. And then it's very like categorical, or the beginnings of really seeing things in categorical ways. Any questions? I think it's interesting because I suspect that the like Pope-esque crown that was originally put on the high priestess was to denote the Sophia energy. And I think for some reason that got confused with the Popes, or like people forgot about the association. But as you see, some of the cards have all of that. So it just got lost over time. Any thoughts or questions, my people who are live with me? If you want to dig deeper with the high priestess, and I think we should, and I think really relying on most of what we understand of the tarot from a series of privileged white men and the way they have framed these cards does a disservice to a more nuanced relationship with the cards. Like the Tower is the story of Saint Barbara. Who would have guessed? You know, Queen of Swords is Athena. Like who would have guessed? Well, because it was men writing those books that got lost. And I believe that there's a reclamation of this. And I know that we have Mother Peace Tarot that did a really fabulous way of doing that, but I wanted to do it within what was actually created in tarot over the years, rather than adding goddesses. That is a remarkable response, but I felt there was a reclamation of many of these cards that needed to come back to us, and that the Empress was Empress Barbara of Scilly, who was like a super badass. She wasn't just like the fecund mother endlessly pushing out babies. Like she was like pretty amazing, and incredible, the Michelle Obama of her time. And the more that we get to unpack these true stories through this history, the way tarot can really open up for us in new ways that we get to decide the truth of the thing. And it's important because look what's happening politically right now, right? Like you got people talking about cat ladies and like postmenopausal females are there to, and just this whole reframing. There is this collective toxic patriarchal response that wants us to go back to the 50s. Well, there was never the 50s. There was never a one true truth ever. And the more I read of history, the more it's like it's always been messy. It's always been weird. But the more we know about the reclamation of what was the histories and what were our truths outside of voices that sit in a place of privilege in a patriarchal system, the more we can resist the attempts of those stories to try to reassert themselves, because they try to go, oh well, this is the old truth, this is the way it was, let's get back to that. Well, that's not actually true. That wasn't the way it was then either. And it's important because allowing that means we lose our rights in so many ways as women. Look what happened to Afghanistan. And we think, oh, that can't happen here. Yes, it can. It absolutely can. And when we come to a place of wanting freedom for all people, it is a constant fight against those forces. And we can never get too comfortable, in my opinion. And there's always a swing, there's always that reactionariness. And they win when people don't think it can happen. Privileged white man tarot. Marion, I love you're so spicy. You're welcome. Yeah, yeah. And these are all goddesses in their own white rights in many ways. And I think that's beautiful. There is an attempt in, men's rights activism and all that to really start using Platonian works and Stoicism, but they're cherry picking some of it. And we don't we can we al it's also there for women, it's not just for them. And they don't get to determine anymore the narrative. I don't think we're gonna let them, are we? And even male historians looking at tarot, not that they don't want this, they're just privilege is, um, invisible. And so it may not even occur to them to look at something in this lens because they've never had to. Ah, thank you, Boomer Mills. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. 100% agree, Patsy. Like, absolutely. Like, it's not a young woman. But the same thing they did to Queen of Swords. Oh, she's Athena. She's the single woman. So she's the old maid. No one wants to be her. And, she's just the mourning bee that no one wants, right? And that's the story of patriarchy, that if you don't do what we want, we're going to create a narrative to either ridicule you or say that you're dangerous and burn you. It's a story as old as time in the patriarchy. Thank you guys. Privilege is blind, including mine and all the ways I have it. Any questions, guys? I think we're about done. I'm going to go have this talk again on Instagram, and if you're interested in this, go I should create playlists. You can go to my YouTube. Like I've done a few of these over the last year and a half or so, but it's a lot of research. Like this is taking me months to find this story. And because when we're following the feminine story, it's much, much harder than the male story because you have to look at what's missing. You have to find these side tributaries of story in order to find the story because it was never repeated. And so, I mean, this has taken me months of just digging and digging and digging to really and to try to be non-biased and as objective as possible and not try to put my spin on it. But it's hard work. It's hard work. It's important. Oh, you're welcome, guys. Thank you. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. But if you want to have more fun, again, on the 19th at 3:00, where I have a guided meditation that I wrote, where you are going to meet Lady Justice, or the personification, the archetype of justice. And we're going to talk about the themes of justice and also balance overall within tarot. And I hope you can make it for that. And finally, last thing, my class, Speaker of the Deck, is up. We start the workshops on October 7th, but you can get all the pre-recorded materials now, of which there is a lot. It is probably 12 hours to 14 hours of instruction and a bunch of homework and a bunch of fun journals. So you can start doing that now and then be ready for when we start doing the workshop process together. So you can go here, find out more information, and get yourself signed up. I'd love to have you. I know, the UK time. I'm so sorry. Ah, it's like I have to try to grab everyone. If I had enough people from Europe, if I knew that, then I would do 2 workshops, like one for US folks, one for European folks. I would definitely do that. It's just trying to figure that out. So maybe we can. If I get enough people to make that something we could do, I'd be happy to do that easily. Marion, my life choices are the very essence of Queen of Swords. Queen of Swords she's like the goddess. Yeah, of course. But you see also the snake. And I wonder, is there a snake Medusa element here that there's a link that I didn't have time to research that I'm curious about. All right, friends, I'm going to go for now. If you want this little slideshow, this PDF I created, you can always email me, Jenna@jennamatlin.com, and I'd be happy to give it to you if you want it yourself. I would be happy to give it to you. All of this is taken from Oh my god, you guys, I don't speak French, but I'm starting to understand it more because I was just, like, going through, the Museum of the Louvre, like, their digital collection, the French collection, the Italian collections, also collections in DC and New York, just really trying to find this, and it's all, like, non-copyrighted, like, it's not like you have to sign off for any of it, but it's really cool, and if you'd like that, I'd be happy to give it to you. You can email me. All right, friends. Hopefully, I'll see you in 2 weeks or come over to Instagram if you want this again. And it's great to have you. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being here and letting me know that this is like a valuable and important work to do besides just me thinking so. Yeah, add 5 hours. So, like, 1 or 2 AM for my classes. Alright, yeah, so 3 PM, US time, so that would be what, 8 what is that? 8 PM? So 1900 hours? Military time for the US because we always gotta do something different. So, alright, friends, take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, and have fun with tarot. Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. Bye, friends.